Good morning, students. Today we are going to start the next part of friction. Take out your textbook, page number 152. We have already studied about friction. Now let us understand the types of friction. Basically, there are three types of friction: static friction, sliding friction, and rolling friction. Let us understand them one by one. Static friction. When an object is at rest position and we start pushing that object, at that time static friction involves in it. Means first the object is at rest but we have started it to moving. So that initial force which we are applying on the force which is opposing it, that force is known as static friction. You can note down the definition of static friction from this slide. Now, sliding friction. Sliding friction means when two surfaces which comes in contact slides over each other. You can see the picture. It is a sliding friction where the boys are sliding on the surface. Another example is when you slide on a slide. So that all are sliding friction. It is actually weaker than static friction. It is lesser than static friction because it is easy to slide a piece of furniture over the floor after you start it moving. So when we are initially starting it, it is static friction. Once it has started, now it is easier for us to move it further. So after that, sliding friction comes in contact. Or whenever we are sliding over another surfaces, the sliding friction comes there. Next is rolling friction. When an object rolls over the surface of another object, this type of friction is called rolling friction. For example, whenever we are using any wheels, you can see the picture here in the bag. The wheels are there, so it is easier to carry such kind of bag because the wheels are there and the friction is reduced. If there are no wheels, it will be difficult for us to carry it, right? So rolling friction is much lesser than even sliding friction. So static friction is bigger, then comes sliding friction, and lastly the rolling friction. In the previous video, I have explained about the machine parts where the ball bearings are used. You can also see the figure 12.16, page number 153 of your textbook, where in few machine parts the balls or the spherical iron balls are used. It is used because they act as wheels or they act as a rolling friction. And hence it reduces the friction of the machine parts. You can also observe it in your fan, ceiling fan. These ball bearings are used there also. So since the rolling friction is smaller than the sliding friction, sliding is replaced in most machines by the use of ball bearings. The examples just now I have given, in ceiling fans, in bicycles, the axles are used actually, and in hubs also these are used. Now, there is also another type of friction which is known as fluid friction. Now, first of all, what are fluids? So, liquid and gases are actually known as fluids in science. And when a force exerted by these fluids, such type of frictional force is called a drag. So when these fluids exert a frictional force, that is called drag. Now we came to know that liquid and gas are fluids. Then what is fluid friction? Actually, air is very light and thin, but still it exerts a frictional force on objects moving through it. Similarly, water is also a liquid, but it also exerts force of friction when the objects move through them. So the frictional force on an object in a fluid depends on its speed with respect to the fluid. Also, the frictional force depends on the shape of the object which moves through fluids. For example, aeroplane and birds, they move in air. So here air is a fluid and the air also exerts force. This force is known as fluid friction. To overcome this fluid friction, nature has given bird a streamlined body. Streamlined body means narrow from front and back. The same structure we have made in aeroplanes too. Why we have made all this structure, streamlined structure? So that the fluid friction becomes less. Similarly, you can see in water the fishes streamlined structure, narrow from front and back. The same technique we have used in making ships also. To overcome the fluid friction, the ships are made streamlined. So these are few examples of fluid friction in nature as well as which we have made. So it is obvious that when object moves through the fluids, they have to overcome friction acting on them. Therefore, these efforts are made to reduce the friction, that is, streamline bodies. And in nature also we have seen birds and fishes which have streamlined bodies to overcome fluid friction. So today's homework, question number 1 to 5, try to write down these questions and read the chapter thoroughly. By this we come to the end of the chapter friction. Please read the chapter thoroughly at least 2 to 3 times and watch the video repeatedly. Thank you all.